Talk on Teleforum on Beaver County Radio. 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM, and beavercountyradio.com. And now, here is the host of the show, Eddy Crow.
We ain't slowing down for a second. Way too much to do today. It's Teleforum. My name's Eddy Crow. Last hour, it was MRS Physical Therapy with Dale Reckless. This hour, very proud to announce a couple of people. Number one, Jeff Bost here in the studio. Number two, on the phone, if I did this right, Dr. Joseph Maroon. Doctor, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I did it right. This is a rare treat. Jeff, I get to talk to fairly often, but Dr. Maroon, I don't get to talk to. And the reason we're doing this, there's, at least judging by the reaction of the media, there is some potentially phenomenal news about Alzheimer's treatment. And Jeff, I'll let you explain, because I saw the story and I thought, this must be a big deal because this usually doesn't play this big. For Alzheimer's patients, what is the new drug? Is there hope? I want to get both of your thoughts about this because this seems to be being played out as groundbreaking.
Well, it certainly is, and it's also wonderful to have Dr. Maroon here. Dr. Maroon, a colleague and friend for many, many years, and we're both co-hosts the Living Well show on this channel, and we're excited to talk to you, Eddy, that's for sure, as a pair. As you said, both of us aren't typically on, but today it's sort of a heightened awareness that we want to talk about the new Alzheimer's drug, Leqembi. That just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Leqembi.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Dr. Maroon is typically on Living Well, and the listeners there know his background as a neurosurgeon, triathlete, consult the St. Barnabas Health System like myself, and also a very interested in Alzheimer's disease as it regards to wellness and mental health. And Dr. Maroon,
sure,
I'm going to let you lead off with this. What's the big news today about, or this week, I guess, about Leqembi?
Well, the big news is that after many years and literally billions of dollars of research efforts, the company Eisai, along with Biogen, two major pharmaceutical companies, received FDA approval for the use of Leqembi for the treatment of Alzheimer's disease, provided there are several provisos here. Provided, number one, you have one has mild cognitive impairment or mild Alzheimer's disease, and that means it has to be diagnosed, and it's diagnosed with a PET scan, which is a $5,000 to $7,000 test that may or may not be paid for. It may be out of pocket. And also, it's a drug that attacks a inflammatory compound in the brain called beta amyloid, and it attacks it to reduce it. And the problem is it is effective, in quotes effective, in only 27% of the cases to which it is given at a cost of $26,500 per year and IV injections every 2 weeks. So to put it in perspective, it's effective. The studies have shown it, in quotes, effective in 27% in slowing the disease, not curing it, but in slowing it for an additional approximately 6 months of time, according to the studies to date. So the individual is probably going to pay at least 20% out-of-pocket cost, which means $5,000, not covered by insurance, another $5,000 probably for a PET scan, possibly a lumbar puncture, and the complication rate of the drug is approximately 21%, and those complications include hemorrhages in the brain and or swelling of the brain swelling.
Other than that, Dr. Maroon, it must be safe.
Yeah.
So we're left with a drug that's approved by the FDA, quite expensive, significant complications, not a cure, and possibly, in 1 out of 4 or so cases, slows the disease by 6 months. So obviously, patients need to discuss this in great detail with their physician for all of the things I just stated.
Dr. Maroon, we've discussed this drug, the monoclonal antibodies, and how they affect the plaque and reduce it, and the side effects. And so it's a complicated subject, and there's a lot of facts you went over. But the fact is, when it was originally approved, there was certainly very similar discussion as you just went over with our listeners as far as pluses and minuses. And in fact, the board that actually ended up approving it was split on the approval, and this is one of the reasons for the delay in the final approval for the drug, and also the reason for the continued observational studies that are going to be done on it, that it's not a slam dunk. Would you agree with that, Dr. Maroon?
Absolutely not. And again, all of the things I just stated, you'd have to give serious thought, as well as the financial considerations, to the complications, as well as the overall effectiveness and how long it may last.
Jeff Bost is my guest. Dr. Joseph Maroon is my guest. It's Teleforum on Beaver County Radio. Dr. Maroon, is this the first step to getting better results? Is this the first step that has to be taken to get the price down? Is that how it works?
No, I think it's the first step to really continuing to do follow-up studies to confirm or disconfirm the studies that have been done by the drug companies and supported by the drug companies. And then it's a whole other discussion scientifically about what the drugs were based on in terms of their investigation. In other words, I mentioned the beta amyloid hypothesis. The focus of the science was how, if we eliminate beta amyloid, is that going to reduce reduce the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease? That's the question. Or have some effect in improving a patient who has already begun to have dementia.
I think
there are very strong reasons to actually question the whole hypothesis of beta amyloid being the factor responsible for Alzheimer's disease. In fact, quite frankly, we've been doing studies using very sophisticated imaging called MR spectroscopy, and strongly suggest that it's not beta amyloid that is the underlying pathogenesis or cause. It's a condition called oxidative stress, and that's something we can discuss in more detail if you'd like.
I've got a question, and doctor, please dumb it down for me. What is beta amyloid?
Beta amyloid is a protein in the brain that is formed and is very inflammatory and causes destruction of the surrounding tissue around it. It's one of the hallmarks. How do you diagnose Alzheimer's disease? Well, primarily at autopsy, but we now have scans that can demonstrate beta amyloid, which is seen microscopically after someone's demise. So beta amyloid and another protein called tau, T-A-U, that forms little tangles in the brain, and both the beta amyloid and the neurofibrillary tangles, it's like a splinter under your finger. An inflammatory response occurs that causes in your finger redness, tender, swollen pain. In the brain, it causes destruction of the neurons, which are you have 86 billion neurons in your brain, which are the transistors, if you would, or the structures that enable your brain to function and work. And it destroys these and the connections from one neuron to the other called a synapse. So these are all destroyed by the inflammation. So it's an inflammatory process that's precipitated by the formation of beta amyloid. But what causes the beta amyloid in the first place? And that's where we've done research, quite frankly, showing that free radicals or beta, the oxidative stress. If you put a piece of iron outside and it rusts, the rust is oxidation. The iron is becoming oxidized. Well, in the brain, there's a anti oxidant called glutathione, which we now know is markedly reduced in the brain, and there's an increase in iron, literally iron, in the brain in patients with Alzheimer's disease. And we now can diagnose this experimentally using imaging, MR spectroscopy.
Dr. Maroon, if I could go back to what your statement was on the idea of the plaque, I think and then we've discussed this before, there's numerous autopsies on people that have no dementia symptoms that have plaque, and yet they have no symptoms, at least at the time of their death. So the idea of it actually, the plaque being the pathological cause of Alzheimer's disease, is it any plaque or the burden of plaque? And I think that was the thought that the PET scans are done on people at the time of their enrollment in using the new Leqembi drug. Is it to see how much plaque and whether or not there's too much plaque in the sense that they're too far along and the drug won't have any effect. So the idea of the plaque as being the actual determinant of the disease is certainly in question, with the fact that there are people without dementia that have it, and as well as the fact that if too much plaque is there, they aren't permitted to take the drug.
Yeah, excellent observations, Jeff. Very good. I'm sure my brain has a whole lot of beta amyloid plaque and neurofibrillary tangles. It's one of the processes that occurs with aging. It's what causes, how much is too much, and how much inflammation is caused are things that are still we just aren't sure about.
How much do we know now about Alzheimer's that we didn't 10 years ago? Are we making equal progress with this as we are with other issues?
We don't have, let's put it this way, there's no cure. We know that there are ways of possibly preventing it, or at least slowing it or delaying the onset. And these are things that Jeff and I have spoken about on our radio show with St. Barnabas many times. And there are 5 factors. Number 1, diet, the appropriate diet, and we can go into that, the Mediterranean diet, etc. Number 2 is getting enough regular exercise, physical activity. Number 3 is avoiding environmental toxins, drugs, alcohol, tobacco, illicit drugs. Number 4 is controlling stress. Stress is neurotoxic to the brain. And number 5 is getting adequate sleep. So we know that these are 5 factors that will slow and maybe even prevent Alzheimer's disease.
Why? You were talking earlier, Dr. Maroon, about the patients and this new drug. They've got to be early on with the disease to really benefit from this drug. Why is that the case?
Once you have lethality or death of neurons, they're not Lazarus-like. They're not going to come back. Once you destroy the cells, they're not going to. It doesn't regenerate. So you have once you have a certain burden of destruction of neurons, which are the active parts of the brain that make us who we are, they can't come back. So it really is essential to have some intervention early on. And the problem is Alzheimer's can start 10 to 15 years earlier than the symptoms develop. So we need good biomarkers to be able to pick this up earlier. And these are becoming available now. There are actually blood tests that are 85 to 90% reliable that can be had, can be done, that gives a prognostic figure of the likelihood of developing Alzheimer's disease 5, 10, 15 years later. But it's like Do you want to know?
I'm glad you asked that. Is that a question that you would want the answer to?
Yeah.
What do patients tell you about that?
Well, it's like the BRAC, B-R-A-C gene for breast cancer. Some women, I don't want to know if I'm going to develop this, or Parkinson's disease, or in this case, Alzheimer's disease. And some patients say, I don't want to know what's going to happen. But what I earlier mentioned, there are ways, if you take the steps, if you make the choices in terms of the diet, exercise, and things I mentioned, it is possible, we believe, to slow or prevent it. And what we're doing is we're reducing the oxidative stress on the brain. When you do all of the things I mentioned, you're reducing the free radicals that are very deleterious in excess in the brain, which leads to destruction of DNA, of protein, and other elements that constitute our cells. So it's preventive. You can take preventive measures. In 90+% of cases, the diseases that we acquire are environmental, or as we would say, epigenetic, not genetic. In other words, the genetic influence on the diseases we acquire are in the 5 to 10, maybe 15% range. You can't do anything about. 85% of the things that we acquire with age are related to the factors I mentioned, the pillars: diet, exercise, environmental toxins, stress, and sleep.
Dr. Maroon, we're almost to the break, but what you're talking about is choices, and I think that's really the choice that we make, and the timing of the choice. We say you should never give up hope, and people with early dementia, there's certainly studies that show exercise and anything to reduce oxidative and inflammatory stress can help. But the idea is the choices of our life. And are we going to combat obesity and control our diabetes and get exercise? Those are the things that really are, in the long run, are going to reduce the incidence of Alzheimer's, which is really exploding with the baby boomers. A lifestyle of not basically taking care of yourself is now blossoming into the largest group of Alzheimer's disease that we'll ever see, most likely, at one time.
1 out of 7 patients or people over 65 will develop Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tsunami.
Will have Alzheimer's, 1 out of 7. When you get into your 80s, it's 1 out of 3. So there's 6.5 to 7.5 million people in the United States with Alzheimer's living today. So it is very prevalent, and it's a terrible disease with seeing the deterioration mentally, physically of individuals. And for caretakers, it's an incredible burden mentally, socially, physically, and financially.
Dr. Joseph Maroon is my guest, along with Jeff Bost. You may have heard them going back and forth before. They host Living Well. It happens on Saturdays. More about the new Alzheimer's drug after news. It's Teleforum at 28 after on Beaver County Radio.
Tune in every Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. for another insightful edition of Living Well, a special segment on Beaver County Radio designed to help you enjoy the best, most fulfilling, and healthiest life possible. Hosted by Dr. Joseph Maroon and Jeff Bost, and presented by St. Barnabas. Living Well, Saturday mornings at 8:30. Right here on Beaver County Radio, WBVP Beaver Falls, WMBA Ambridge, along with 99.3 FM and 95.7 FM.
Circle of Friends is happy to announce the 2023 Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program voucher schedule. They will be distributed in person starting in mid-July. Beaver County residents age 60 or older are eligible. Each individual will receive a total of 5 $10 vouchers. All vouchers must be used through November 30th, 2023. First location is Circle Friends in New Brighton, Tuesday, July 18th from 2 to 4, Thursday, July 20th at the Ambridge Farmers Market from 4 to 7, and Friday, July 21st from 1 to 4 at Circle Friends in Conway, and Saturday, July 22nd at the Beaver Farmers Market from 10 until 1. For more information, call Circle Friends at 724-869-4224.
When you talk about community involvement and safety, the name Fry stands at the forefront in Beaver County. Fry Transportation's mission is to continue to raise the bar as the gold standard in their industry by providing the safest, most reliable, and cost-efficient transportation service in Beaver County through their strong relationships with their communities, best-in-their-class drivers, equipment, and technology. There's nothing more important than the safety of their students, employees, and community members. Fry Transportation, where the quality of their organization is characterized by the makeup of the individual behind the wheel.
Beaver County Radio's news source, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com. Here's Curtis Walsh.
Good morning. We can expect partly sunny skies today with a high of 82 degrees. There will be some thunderstorms rolling in this afternoon. We'll have a complete Beaver County radio weather forecast after this look at news. Beaver County Radio News correspondent Sandy Jordana reports that Nassan Malik Hunt, 18 of Ambridge, is lodged in the Beaver County Jail in connection to the homicide that occurred on Sunday, July 9th in Ambridge. He is charged with 1 count of criminal homicide, 1 count of firearms not to be carried without a license, evading arrest or detention on foot, tampering with and fabricating physical evidence, as well as false identification to a law enforcement officer. All charges are in connection to the homicide death of 15-year-old Asan Moreland, and a second suspect is in the case but is not yet in custody. Ambridge Police Chief John DeLuca commended all 15 of his officers and the fire department, who he says in the pouring down rain tried to preserve blood and evidence from the murder scene on Olive Lane Sunday night. He said 2 assistant DAs, 4 county detectives, and other police departments all assisted his department in a joint effort. He told Ambridge Council that the Aliquippa homicide Saturday night and the Sunday homicide in Ambridge are not related. Beaver County Radio's Matt Durzik reports at Tuesday night's Beaver Falls City Council meeting, the council approved the bid results for the sale of 9 different property lots along Bridge Street to Him Looking LLC. The Aliquippa-based non-commercial entity is set to purchase each lot at $500 for a total of $4,500 for the properties. The council also approved general fund expenditures totaling over $500,000 over the period of June 28th through July 10th of 2023. City Treasurer Sandy Wilkins stated that the fund members were in conjunction with the repaying of several ARPA measures that were taken care of during that period. Also approved was the subdivision of the parking lot located at 234 9th Avenue in the city to be completed by the Barron Agency. Fry lovers, where are you at? To celebrate National French Fry Day on July 13th, McDonald's is giving away free fries of any size for 1 day only. McDonald's fans across the country can score the world-famous fries free of charge exclusively via the McDonald's app with no purchase necessary at participating locations. Authorities searching for a homicide suspect who used bed sheets to escape from a northwestern PA jail last week says items found in the last 24 hours lead them to believe he's still in the area. Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens of the Pennsylvania State Police said earlier that campsites and small stockpiles believed to be related to escapee Michael Burham had been found. He said Tuesday that searchers are still finding some items that they believe are connected to him. Bivens also said the reward money for information in the case has more than doubled and now totals $19,500. Beaver County Radio's Sandy Jordana reports the first order of business on Ambridge City Council's lengthy agenda was the swearing in of Councilman Russell Bazzaglia, who replaces Mayor Tina Iafordio Miller. Both will run for their seats in November. Council accepted Bazzaglia's resignation from the Planning Commission along with that of Ryan Cecil. Council is to advertise for replacements. Council approved action to sign the police mutual aid agreement between the Beaver Valley Regional Police Department and the Ambridge Police Department. Council approved the hiring of part-time officer Nathan Scarietta upon completion of his necessary requirements for the position. Mayor Miller commented on the professionalism of Police Chief John DeLuca in light of the homicide that occurred Sunday. And 2 part-time temporary seasonal employees were hired in Public Works. They're Kevin Buzek and Terrence Thornton. They'll be paid $17 an hour upon background checks, physicals, and drug testing.
Here's the Beaver County forecast on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming at beavercountyradio.com.
We can expect partly sunny skies this morning, making way for thunderstorms this afternoon. We'll have a high of 82 degrees. Tonight, thunderstorms and rain showers will stick around, going down to a low of 68. Some showers and thunderstorms possible tomorrow with a high of 84. Partly sunny on Friday with a high of 84 and a chance of a storm. And partly cloudy skies Saturday with a chance of thunderstorms and a high of 86 degrees. That's a look at the news for now. I'm Curtis Walsh on 99.3 FM, 95.7 FM, 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, and streaming live around the world at beavercountyradio.com.
Talk about what's happening in Beaver County or around the world on Teleforum. 724-843-1888. 724-774-1888. It's Teleforum with Eddy Crow.
If you would like to, you can call with questions. That's fine. This is also being live Facebook fed. Jeff Bost is here in the studio with me. Dr. Joseph Maroon is on the phone with me. And we're talking about a new drug that just got approved. Dr. Maroon, correct me if I say it wrong. Leqembi? Is that correct?
That's correct. Leqembi, K-E-M. Leqembi.
All right. Before we get back into it, I want to ask you a general question. Do pharmaceutical companies have entire staffs that come up with quaint names?
Yes, I'm sure they have.
Okay,
Yes, they do.
That name.
I don't know where they come from, but I mean, it's usually word salad of some kind.
It sounds friendly, though. Leqembi. It sounds like somebody you would have a beer with, like their middle name. How long can we expect the chase for Alzheimer's to continue? How much progress are we making? You see these drugs come out like you were talking about, Doctor. It's help, but it's not near the help of a miracle cure-all, it doesn't sound like. Do you see a timeline to improve?
I would put it at 10 years, 5 to 10 years. And that's an absolute guess. But I don't see the drugs that we have now are mildly preventive in slowing the disease. The one process that I would mention that I would personally strongly consider, being a senior citizen myself, I'm very attuned to what's happening in this space. And Dr. Oscar Lopez, who's the head of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here at the University of Pittsburgh, is a brilliant neuroscientist who knows, he's forgotten more than I'll ever know about Alzheimer's disease. But he headed a major multi-institutional study that looked at a process called plasmapheresis, in which there's an exchange, literally a blood exchange of plasma in patients with Alzheimer's disease. And they showed up to a 75 to 80% arresting and slowing of Alzheimer's disease when followed up to 18 months, which is 3 times better than the drugs, and at much less cost. So I think, and it hasn't been very popularized, but I think I'm just speaking personally, if I had significant symptoms, plasmapheresis would be a very strong consideration of mine, and it's available to the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center at UPMC.
And Dr. Maroon, I'd like to add on that, the plasmapheresis, similarly to the drugs that are now the monoclonal antibodies, at least initially, the plasmapheresis is not FDA approved for reimbursement, so it is part of a study. And I think the drugs that are now approved, when they were experimental, it was also that they really didn't get the publicity. So the idea of the FDA and subsequently Medicare approval is really what has exploded this technology onto the field as far as the drug.
But it's approved, Jeff, but as you pointed out to me, it's approved at a minimum of $20,000.
Right.
The cost to the patient is going to be $10,000 to $15,000 out of pocket.
Right, and it's definitely cost related. But the point I'm making is just because this drug and this technology and this approach to Alzheimer's is approved does not mean there's others in the pipeline that will be eventually approved, like plasmapheresis or some antioxidant therapy that is in the future. So I think the idea of the approval of this drug may be a gateway or a doorway to many of the other treatments that are coming down, because the criteria of success is fairly low in this study. I mean, the idea of it significantly improving people was sort of an afterthought. What they did significantly show was it was able to reduce plaque. It was a structural approval more correct. than a actual outcome approval. So we may see non-drug therapies or antioxidant therapies or plasmapheresis or other things that are going to come down the pike because of, so it's sort of the golden lining perhaps in all this, but we'll gather more data as well.
Yeah.
Jeff Bost is my guest. Dr. Maroon is my guest. Dr. Maroon, you mentioned earlier symptoms, and I don't know if we've broken that down. We're talking about Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's drugs and Alzheimer's treatments. What are Alzheimer's symptoms that you would be looking for in a loved one?
Well, the first symptom is usually a slipping of the memory. And as we get older, there's a condition called mild cognitive impairment that is very, very common, and in which I forgot where my car keys are, or where did I park my car, or what was that telephone number. But with Alzheimer's, it becomes progressive. It's how do I get to the store, or Giant Eagle, or more significant memory problems. And then there can also be emotional lability, more depression, sadness, mood disturbances that occur, and then progressive, primarily memory problems, and that's why dementia. The word dementia means impaired memory, which is the most common feature that people see.
I saw a television commercial, which is always a bad start to a medical question, doctor. I apologize. I saw a medical commercial, and it was treatment, or it was a support system, not for Alzheimer's patients or their loved ones, but for angry Alzheimer's patients. In general, are commercials about medical conditions helpful or disruptive to the medical community, because you're both in it?
Well, I mean, medical drug companies spend literally billions of dollars, in quotes, educating the public about symptoms that always associated with their particular drugs that are purported to alleviate or reduce those symptoms. So it's like everything in the news, except on Beaver County news, of course, where everything is, 100% accurate.
Thank you.
We know that the news media is incredibly biased, and also usually negative news is much more picked up by individuals from an evolutionary biological viewpoint of survival. We're much more attuned to bad things, bad news, because it may hurt us or affect us, instead of positive news. So again, a major grain of salt when you listen to these things, and then follow up.
Dr. Maroon, I'm thinking about listening to the show today. Someone at home with a loved one who's showing some of the symptoms that you described for Alzheimer's. We know that those symptoms could be related to a vascular problem with the brain or other conditions as well, but they immediately think, as we all do, of Alzheimer's disease. And now the news is blasting us with this new drug. It's going to help us and so on. And our discussion today has been sort of more even-handed in the sense there's certain side effects. It isn't the panacea that's going to cure it. It would be difficult for me to discern. So obviously, a lot of these folks that are learning about it, either through the show today or on written material that they're reading, are going to go to their doctor. As a physician, you have this information, the history. It was difficult to approve this drug. There was reservations. It's still going to be studied. I think the medical professionals are going to really be in a difficult position with the loved ones coming in with people with memory loss, and you're sort of going to be like dividing the baby. You have to decide, on these people whether they spend and risk these side effects, or do they have this? Is it possible hope to have some improvement for 6 months?
No, your observation is right on target, Jeff. And so the responsibility of the physician is, number one, eliminate all those potential possibilities associated with dementia that are not Alzheimer's. In other words, I've seen many patients with dementia who have had normal pressure hydrocephalus, a condition in which there's obstruction of flow of spinal fluid, it impairs memory, and you present with memory loss. It's relatively straightforward, corrected with a shunt. There are problems with vitamin deficiency. Vitamin B12 and other deficiencies can lead to neurological problems that are frequently overlooked. Lyme disease. I've had a patient recently who saw literally 20 physicians who did not diagnose Lyme disease in a patient with cognitive impairment, difficulty playing his golf game, and things of this nature. So, number one, you have to eliminate those conditions associated with dementia that are correctable or possibly treatable. And then get a referral to a special center like the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center here at UPMC that specializes in doing various programs, cognitive programs, evaluation to confirm the diagnosis and institute the best treatment available now.
Does that happen often, that a patient will come to you and say, I saw this ad on TV for this medicine and I want this medicine and that'll fix it?
The patients come in and request certainly a discussion of it. Might this medicine help me, doctor? And then we get into the discussion. Well, it can help you in 27% of the time. There's a 21% complication rate. You may have brain hemorrhages and brain edema.
It's going to be a difficult discussion.
To a patient call.
Yeah. I mean, how are you going to answer? I mean, not you or me, but the neurologists that are going to be seeing this, family doctors that are going to be seeing this, people that call us or listening. It seems like the physicians that are going to be, actually on the ground, this is a very difficult choice to make. And I would think the family is going to need a lot of support relative to discernment as far as, are they going to doctor shop? Is all of a sudden a bunch of clinics going to come up that are going to do these infusions, on every street corner? And I foresee that happening. I foresee it, it's sort of the cat out of the bag. We're going to see an explosion of people who may not give them all the facts, so to speak.
It is Teleforum. It's Beaver County Radio, 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA, 99.3 FM, 95.7 FM. Dr. Joseph Maroon is my guest. Jeff Bost is my guest. Which scares people more, Doctor? Alzheimer's or cancer? When either one of those words has to come up in a discussion, which is more crushing?
Well, we know that two things. The most significant worries are dementia and blindness.
Blindness, really?
Yes. Particularly if you have macular degeneration or you're starting to lose your vision. Am I going to go blind? And then dementia is at the very top. I think probably more so than cancer until you get it. And 1 out of 4 people is going to develop a malignancy at some time in their life. And again, fortunately, there's been significant progress in immunotherapy for various cancers that can be put in long-term remission and even a cure. With Alzheimer's and dementia, with dementia due to Alzheimer's, that's still not the case. We're not curing it.
What do we have to do? I mean, will we ever get to that point of curing it? Because this new wonder drug, as people are saying, you're talking about 27% efficacy? Do you believe the the medical science will find not just something to stunt, but to cure?
Who knows? With where the incredible advances in science, with AI, and with all of the progress being made, I suspect yes. But it's like spinal cord injuries. Patients who are quadriplegic or paraplegic. What can be done about that? Are we going to find a cure for that? I believe eventually, not in my lifetime, but I think we will see ways of making major advances in brain diseases like dementia and slowing it. But we're never, none of us are going to get out of this place alive, and eventually there's going to be a terminal event for all of us, and hopefully we can markedly slow, not just 27% of the time, or regain some kind of function of our brains when they start to deteriorate. But age is, we haven't found the cure to aging yet. Ponce de Leon and various other people have been searching for centuries, and we've not found it.
Well, what Ponce de Leon needed to find was a treadmill at the fountain, and because I think we discussed it and brushed on it, but prevention is really what we're talking about right now with Alzheimer's disease and disease of degeneration of aging. Setting the stage for a healthy, quality life throughout your life is really all about prevention and doing the things early on that won't precipitate a lot of the chronic diseases, and that's really where we've advocated on this show, Living Well. I mean, the idea of what is right thing to do and what is the wrong thing, and we have the power. It's not all in our genes. Just because our father died of a heart attack doesn't mean we have to. And I think that empowerment is something that needs to be broadcast as well. It's not as simple fix as taking a pill. We're just not going to see that. It's going to be hard work. It's going to be actually, putting those carbs down and maybe losing a pound or two and exercising when we may not feel like it. And these are choices that we're going to have to make if we really are serious about it. And I think people are learning that and doing that, and hopefully it'll take root.
Dr. Maroon, I want to ask you a very simple question. Do you believe people trust the medical industry? I hate to use the word industry. Do people trust medical professionals more or less than they did 10 years ago?
I think there's, generally speaking, much more apprehension and skepticism and marked recourse to Dr. Google. No question about it. And, I don't think anybody comes to see me who doesn't Google who I am first and what I've done and this sort of thing. And that goes, I think, for all doctors. How many stars do they get? 4 stars, 5 stars, 2 stars, and the comments from various patients who have seen doctors are all online now. So, I think a lot of that's very good. I think there's a positive aspect to that. You have to be your own ombudsman, so to speak, in today's medical environment. It's extremely challenging, even when you're on the inside, and you just have to be careful. Do your homework, and I always suggest. I tell people you need this or you need that, but get a second, third opinion. I'll share any records I have with anybody you want. I want you to do all your due diligence before I would do anything for you. So I think that, and doctors, I think most doctors are and should be very open about other opinions. I do it for my family. I do it for myself. And I'm very happy for patients to be skeptical about anything I tell them.
Dr. Joseph Maroon on the phone, Jeff Bost here in the studio. That's the cast of Living Well, the show you listen to on Saturdays. Dr. Maroon, let me ask you this before we let you go. What should I have asked you today that you wanted to talk about with this new drug, or anything that I didn't ask you?
Well, just as I just closed, I think you have to be a bit. You have to be very inquisitive, skeptical. Look at the pros, the cons, the costs, the potential risks and complications, and then make a judgment call yourself, which is a guesstimate, but it's a judgment based on the information you have. And that's the best we can do for almost any decision medically.
Jeff, anything from you?
I just think this disease especially is an emotional response. There'll be a lot of emotion. The highs and lows of this drug is going to be like a yo-yo for a lot of people. And I think getting the good counsel, the medical counsel from trusted physicians and caregivers is really what you need. And this is perhaps a start, this radio show today, that can give you some of the background, but it really, you can't cut the emotion out of it. And your loved one has these diseases that you're frightened and what's going to happen next. And this is hope for a lot of people. And so everything has to be balanced when we make those decisions.
Jeff Bost and Dr. Joseph Maroon, thank you both so very much. An incredibly informative hour. It's Teleforum on Beaver County Radio.
Do you have low back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain, or foot ankle pain? Many of these conditions could be prevented by simply working on flexibility as much as strength. Dale Reckless at MRS Physical Therapy is happy to announce a new one-on-one assisted stretching experience, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, or PNF, a stretching technique utilized to increase range of motion and flexibility by increasing the length of the muscle and increasing neuromuscular efficiency. A flexible body is the core basic need for our body to function well, and we tend to omit this important component and skip over to strength and conditioning. Even people with balance issues as they age may prevent exacerbation of their condition if they work on their flexibility. Book a 25-minute PNF session today and call MRS Physical Therapy in Bridgewater and Cranberry. Visit mrsphysicaltherapy.com for more information.
The warm weather is back, and that can only mean one thing. Pirates baseball for a 75th season on Beaver County Radio. Tune in and listen to the Pirates Radio Network broadcast team as they take you through every pitch, hit, and out of the 2023 baseball season. Make sure you set your radio dial to WBVP WMBA 99.3 FM or 95.7 FM for all the action. Pirates baseball is being presented locally by the St. Barnabas Health System, Freedom United Federal Credit Union, Falcone's Moon Township Ford, Keystone Wellness Program, Friendly Federal Credit Union, Dr. C. Timothy Lip, and Beaver County Radio, 95.7 and 99.3 FM, 1230 WBVP and 1460 WMBA.
95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with WBVP, WMBA, and BeaverCountyRadio.com, invite you to tune in to Sounds of Faith. Tune in Sunday mornings from 7 until 9 for a mix of the best sacred music of all time. Sounds of Faith is brought to you by Crawford Tire and Beaver, the William Murphy Funeral Home, City Rescue Mission, MRS Physical Therapy, Circle of Friends, J&J Spratt Funeral Home, and Rome Monument and Inspirational Gifts. Sounds of Faith, uplifting, relaxing, and inspiring radio. Sunday mornings from 7 until 9 on 95.7 and 99.3 FM, along with WBVP, WMBA, and BeaverCountyRadio.com.
The law offices of Dillon, McCandless, King, Coulter, and Graham is a multi-purpose law firm offering a comprehensive range of services, including litigation, business development, domestic relations, corporate